I have been compelled to do another video here about the current state of netcode and network performance in online shooters and specifically Call of Duty. We're right now in the middle of the Cold War year. We're in peak tournament times and some of the biggest revenue ever for Warzone. And first off, new information has come to light. I mentioned this previously, maybe like a week ago. I did a brief stream, but I had previously done some videos, look pretty much like what you're seeing in front of you, pertaining to what does any of that really amount to? What does any of the things that you hear about delay, lag compensation, bullet registration, what is going on with these things? And there are people out here who have done high-speed camera breakdowns, and they have these nice videos they put together, and in a lot of ways they are just not correct. And it's all great, but my point here is you don't really need all that. There is a common sense way to look at these things and figure out if they're real, if they amount to anything, and if they matter, and really ultimately pertain to why are you playing any of these games. And I'm just going to be very frank at this point. If you are not playing on a fiber optic level local area network with any online multiplayer game, especially a shooter game, you have no idea what's really happening. And the premise, if anyone's not familiar with this, is that, and some of this should be common sense, it's just that nobody talks about it, is that you what you see on your screen is not what the other people have on their screens. And the reason that that is the case is because it takes time to update the information over the internet. And the two very general models are direct peer-to-peer connections, where your console or computer connects over the internet directly to the other people, or some sort of dedicated centralized server model where the central server from this company acts as a regulator for your information before it goes to those other people. And there are some different hybridized models that use things called listening servers and other stuff, but generally speaking, those are the two models. And the problem with the peer-to-peer network, and the reason everyone has pushed for dedicated servers, is that when Call of Duty ran on peer-to-peer, or other shooters run on peer-to-peer, or any online game, it basically puts the processing on one person's the load on one person's system, but it also gives them this thing called host advantage. And over the years, the companies have done different stuff to try to mitigate host advantage, which basically came down to putting artificial penalties, if they were going to do anything, on the person whose system was the host to prevent them from having advantage. But it had all kinds of issues with hacking and other stuff, and basically people pushed for dedicated servers, because that peer-to-peer networking is what causes these host migrations and the lost hosts the majority of the time when you see it in these online games. And so the advantages to peer-to-peer were that if you you weren't dependent on the location of a company's server. But skipping past that, because of all the stuff and the fact that they are on dedicated servers now, what you have on your system, your inputs, motions, everything have to relay to the central server, and then that has to relay out to the other players. And common sense tells you that that is going to have a delay. The question is, how much of a delay? What real effect does it have? And anyone who goes to watch a movie, a stream, anything on the internet for over a decade can clearly see that there are delays involved. That's what produces video buffering. If you go and watch any kind of Twitch streams and you see that your chat becomes desynced over time with the actual video, and when you refresh it, you lose 30 seconds of video. That shows you that these delays are constantly happening over the internet. And basically, the point of this here is I would really like for this to be the final video on any of this. So if anybody catches this, this should sum up everything important and be worth listening to. Is I want to recap what I presented in the earlier things and then add the new information to that. And I think that it's I'm going to use, even though I have Cold War in front of me right now, the leading authority on this, Battle Nonsense, Chris, who works with the network engineering stuff, who does the tests on these games and helped work with DICE from EA and Battlefield, he has not done a second final Cold War testing video. The only information that he has given everyone was during the beta. And the test results were horrible for Cold War. And so the final hard stats that I can present here are from Modern Warfare 2019. But the point of this is that I'm going to reference those stats using what you see in front of you to communicate an ideal state. Because the Modern Warfare 2019 test results were actually pretty good. So, keeping it simple. Your baseline, your indication of your delay to the server is your ping. All the pings referenced in this are going to be what are called RTT pings. That means to the server and back again. The complete bidirectional trip. So if these tests, and I'm going to use the test from Modern Warfare 2019 again, were done on a 27 millisecond ping. Roughly 30 milliseconds. If you have two players going into a gunfight, each of them with the same ping to the server at 30 milliseconds, that would indicate that your time to the server was 15 before it bounced back. Their time to the server was 15 before it bounced back. So for your information to relay to them with zero overhead whatsoever should be 15 plus 15. So you would have a total time to them of 30 milliseconds. But that's not going to happen. The reason it's not going to happen is because you have overhead. You have processing overhead and the server overhead. And really the primary issue that comes up with all of these games is how much overhead is there. And the simplest indicator that you can use to see what kind of overhead you're going to have in that is the tick rate of the servers, which is their processing hertz, their cycles per second. And if you say go back to Battlefield 4, which their test results for Battlefield 4 when it first released, everything was on 10 hertz. And let's see, pull up the information here from Battlefield 4. When Battlefield 4 first released, on even lower ping than that, on 20 milliseconds ping, on a 10 hertz server, between two players, both with 20 millisecond ping, the actual delay, rather than 20 or 30 milliseconds, was 166 milliseconds. When they bumped the servers up to 30 hertz, it dropped down to 83 milliseconds. So keeping that in mind, with a 20 millisecond ping to the server, same for both players, the cumulative trip time between the two of you would, in a no overhead universe, would be 20 milliseconds. On a 10 hertz server, it was in fact over 166 milliseconds. On a 30 hertz, it was 83 milliseconds. So flash forward, that was in 2013, 2014, to Modern Warfare 2019. On a slightly higher ping, which was 27 milliseconds, or close to 30, on a 60 hertz server, rather than the delay being 30 milliseconds, it averaged to be, depending on which component you were talking about, movement, gunfire, etc., it averaged out to 45 to 60 milliseconds. The movement delay was always higher at 60 milliseconds. So your gunfire and damage were around 45 to 55. So you're talking about 50 to 60 milliseconds of real delay. So again, recapping. Some people can't handle numbers like that. In a fairly ideal situation, in Modern Warfare 2019, running on 60 hertz servers, with each player having a cumulative 30 millisecond ping to the server, which would be ideally 30 milliseconds to each other, the natural overhead of the servers and the processing resulted in a 50 to 60 millisecond delay. So it doubled. The real delay was twice what the zero overhead universe would be. So this is ideal, and it did test it higher than that. Even on the same pings, it could go up as high as 80 between the two people. But I'll just keep it at 60, pretending it's a 30 millisecond ping and a 60 real delay. So you say, well, what's the real reality? And again, this the thing is that if anyone will pay attention to what I'm actually saying here, or what any of these tests from different people show, and then compare it to what you experience in an online gaming environment, it will make complete sense. But you will start to see what is happening with this. And I have been around long enough. I've been playing devotedly Call of Duty since Black Ops 2. I played Battlefield 4 until, the system nearly blew. I have every one of all of those games ever created. Every Halo, every Gears of War, everything. The common reactions that you see from people of raging and feeling that things are broken or not working, whatever, are generally speaking real. And with all of the factors involved in these games, it is very good to know that what you are instinctually picking up on is real. And so what does that amount to? Okay, so here's the way to look at this. It's very simple. The generic running speed in all of the recent major Call of Duty games is around 7 meters per second. That is roughly 23 feet. Well, what is that? Well, as it so works out, if I stand right here on the corner and ping right over here, I can get right at 7 meters, amazingly enough. So in other words, the standard running speed, if I start running here to here, that was 1 second. 1 second, 7 meters. You don't need to be any more complicated than that. Now looking at this, that window, that means that is a 1 second sprinting window. 1 second is 1,000 milliseconds. That means that this distance right here in the middle is 500 milliseconds. If that distance right in the middle is 500 milliseconds, then this is 250-ish. If that's 250, this right in here is 125, and this right in here is 60. Now, if you look at this, you say, well, okay, there's that space. So let's go look at that space. You're talking about 60 millisecond window. That does not look like it's very much. And ideally, this is why under a low ping environment on a high frequency server, Modern Warfare actually did pretty well. If you go back and you look at comparison tests for other games, it was right on par with CSGO. It was right on par with Fortnite. It was right on par with Rainbow Siege 6. The game that constantly outperforms everyone is Overwatch and now Valorant. And Valorant and Overwatch are both at the same level. But Valorant is also running on 128 Hz servers that works is much better suited to high frame rate PCs. So ideally, this would be a pretty good thing. That means that your movement from here to here, that if I saw an enemy on these ping levels running from here to here, I would see them at this spot, while in actuality they are there. Now, the issue with that is, even though that does not look like very much, when you're talking about playing competitive shooting, that is still a discrepancy. That means that if I see them here, they are actually already across the wall. So this becomes the shot around corner window on a 60 millisecond delay. The real problem with that, and this is again my point, is I'm saying look at this at the ideal level. This is about the most minimal delay that you will ever experience. The real issue, one of the issues with this, is that if your pings go lower than this, I do not think that you're going to get much of an improvement due to the server processing unless they go up on the hertz on the server. For example, the Valorant delays can go lower than that on a lower ping. So, for example, I have fiber optic internet, and I can get at times as low as 5 milliseconds to Microsoft or to EA's DICE servers, in which case the 128 Hz servers should basically get the delay window down to like this. And that's just nearly instantaneous. And if you get, I've done a video on this before, that if you get your delay window down to like this right here on 5 to 15 milliseconds on 128 Hz servers, that's basically so minuscule as to be non-existent, and it is possible. I don't think that can happen on the 60 Hz server, so I don't think they can keep up with it. But the problem with this is that under this ideal situation here, that is a unidirectional delay. That means that first off, if I'm stationary and I see them at this point here, and they are in fact here, when I go to shoot, there is an equivalent delay of my bullets getting back. And so what the other person is going to experience is not being shot here under any standard lag compensation model that has been tested year after year after year. You can put people on these test servers. You can test them with equivalent pings, and you can see this actually happen in motion. And if anybody wants to see this, you can go and check out. There are numerous people who have put these videos up. And you can see the complete delay, and people experience this all the time. What you actually experience is that when I'm shooting here, You are not getting hit here on your end because of the bidirectional two-way delay. You are actually getting hit over here. What that means is that the real experience, and again, there's the reason I'm saying in an ideal environment. In an ideal environment, you are not experiencing, as the enemy, you are not experiencing being shot here. You're experiencing being shot here. So I'll total it up to 120 milliseconds. That was 1,000. This is 500. This is 250. This is 125. Right in here. So you are going to experience, even though I am shooting you right here, you are not going to experience the damage coming in until right in here. On the ideal connection. It is always going to be off. Secondarily, what's going to happen is that if I'm also in motion, when I am here, okay, if I begin shooting you at this point, you are still going to see me back right in here, possibly pulling the gun up. A lot of the guns have like a 250 millisecond ADS time. I have to pull up the actual ADS times, which isn't actually a bad idea. ADS time. Okay, you have ADS times. Looking at some of the 200 to 300 milliseconds. So you're if you were to see me at this point, if I was shooting right here at where I see you on my screen, you on your system are actually going to see me back here in the middle of pulling the gun up and possibly the bullets first starting to fire. But by the time the damage is coming in and you're actually already over here, if you follow what I'm saying, as soon as both people are in motion, you're now going to have an even worse situation where if you begin to strafe back and forth, each person is going to be seeing the other person firing and moving at a previous position. In other words, when you see, if I see the person standing right here and I'm moving and they've actually already moved to here, I am going to be hitting them at a previous pre-strafe position, and they're going to be hitting me at a previous pre-strafe position based on this 60 millisecond delay window. And the damage is actually going to be coming in potentially while we're returning back to that strafe position, because the damage itself has a delay. You're going to have a 60 millisecond positional discrepancy inside of a 120 millisecond damage delay. Even though they're hitting you at the previous position while you're strafing, you aren't going to know that that's happening until you've already moved to another position 60 milliseconds downstream. So this basically makes, there's a phenomenon called, it's called the bouncing ball effect. It's also part of snaking. That when you start to do this, if it happens at high enough speed, you can do this when you're, I did this on another video, you can do this at a high frequency, bouncing above and below a headline, and you can literally, attach the pro attach, he has a video where he demonstrates just standing here in plain gunfire, not taking any damage by doing this. And they put stuff in to try and stop the snaking in certain games. But again, my point is that that's on a minimal delay window. So, the next thing up is, sure, that's sprinting in motion, and that's also going to be this up and down, like, you know, whatever, drop shot, anything that's in motion, you're going to have these delay windows. But what does that mean for damage rates? And the point here is that the 60 milliseconds may not, as a minimum, 60 milliseconds may not seem like that much. But guess what? If you go in and pull up your modern warfare guns, for example, and I'm using it again, the Cold War weapons, the Cold War game has higher health and higher time to kill, which helps to mask some of this stuff. But I want to use the modern warfare as an example because it performs so well and gives you an ideal test date. If you go into your, I'm going to pick the minimum damage range. I'm going to pull up the stats for the, it's actually the maximum damage at the shortest range window for all the guns in Modern Warfare by the main torso chest time to kill. You're ranging from, although there are a few lower exceptions, you're ranging from 100 milliseconds with a FR556 or a striker with hollow point, or a FAL at 125, or an AS VAL at 136, up to about 266 milliseconds. So from just at 100 to 266 milliseconds in Modern Warfare for a time to kill. What that means is that on a if your gun has a if you were using an MP7, where's a good one as an example here? The PKM. PKM had 160 millisecond time to kill. If you have 160 millisecond time to kill, and you go to shoot someone on this minimal delay, for example, I'll be the person coming around the corner. Both of us have optimal ping. There's a minimum 60 millisecond delay window. I come around the corner by the 60 millisecond window. I see them right there, and as I come around the corner, say I already know they're there, I begin to fire. If I'm hitting every bullet on point on them, like if I saw them on the UAV or I bounced around here and I see them, and this happens all the time in competitive matches, boom, I'm right here and I'm shooting. On a 60 millisecond standard window, that is over a third of the bullets are already hitting before I'm even there. Now, just for a second, contemplate that. I am already around a corner. I am already looking at you before you can even see me. And over a third of your damage has already happened before it even hits. Secondarily, when I move around the corner and begin shooting, because, okay, if this was the 60 millisecond window and I begin shooting, there is also the 60 millisecond delay on the damage. So depending on how quickly I'm able to shoot, the experience delay on the other person's end may be even worse than the window. They're going to be being hit before I'm even here. And depending on how quickly I'm hitting as I show up, there's also going to be the damage delay over that. And as I continue to move around here, they're going to be seeing me in this position in the past. So, my point is that even on the most ideal of connections, this window is going to exist, and over a third of the damage may exist. On the guns that have up at the 266, you're talking about an ideal situation. Nearly 1/4 of the damage will be done. That means that if your gun took 4 shots to kill, or what would be, if it took 6 shots to kill, and a third of it's done, 2 bullets are 2 bullets have hit before anybody's even there. Then, by the time you're reacting and seeing them, which is a human reaction times around 100 milliseconds, two more bullets are hitting. And the experience of this, and this is one of the things that they keep masking with these games, is this has been tested in Battlefield and Advanced Warfare and other games, is that the experience is what's called a damage spike. Generally speaking, it's a damage spike, where all of a sudden you're hit by all of the damage out of nowhere. It depends on how they handle it in a specific game. But typically it's a damage spike. So what that does is it creates what's called an abbreviated time to die. The time to kill and the experience time to die are not the same thing. The bullets will literally all register in certain games at once. Another thing that you'll often see is that the tracers are pointing at the position that they saw you on their screen rather than where you are as the damage is coming in. And again, the point being, even on the high TTK guns, on that timing window, you're going to have nearly a quarter of it. So if it was a 4-shot gun, one of the shots is already in before the person is even on your screen. And this is why, again, people have learned it makes it even worse when you do high-speed motions. When you slide, when you fly around the corner, anything that's a high-speed motion. James Goddard, J-God, has a video up demonstrating this where he went through with high-speed it's high frame rate capture of some sort, where he got them synchronized between pro players in Warzone. And for example, in one video, the guy's falling off the roof, and they're on not too disparate levels of ping, and the guy is already on the ground on his camera, and on the other guy's camera, the guy is still flying midway through the air. Same thing with the jump shots. The people have known this for years. When you fly around the corner, you're way on over here, and they can't. You aren't even on their screen yet. You're like flying through the air, landing and shooting, and you aren't even. You're just barely beginning to pop out on their screen. And so all of this is documented. But my point, again, to the point here, is that even on the ideal, minimal, low ping, high server rate, optimal connection between two people, that window is there, and it is up to, on a 100 millisecond gun, that's over half. 60 millisecond delay is over half of the time to kill. On a 120 millisecond gun, it is half. On 160, it's over a third. And even on the highest ones, like 266, it's nearly a quarter. It's already over with. So then that gets to the next worst part. So keeping in mind that when Battlefield 4 came out, it was running on 10 hertz. That 60 millisecond delay was not the delay at all. On an even lower ping, on those 10 hertz servers rather than so in modern warfare a 30 millisecond ping on 60 hertz servers translates into a 60 millisecond player to player delay. In Battlefield 4, on an even lower ping of 20 on 10 hertz servers, that delay nearly tripled. It was 166. When they got it up to 30 hertz, it dropped down to 83. They nearly cut it in half. The point being that you're talking about in 2013, Battlefield 4 running on 30 hertz servers, upping it up to 30 hertz servers, and having an 83 millisecond delay. Well, guess what? Modern Warfare 2019 game modes that are above, that are the larger modes, the ground war stuff, we're still running right at 20 hertz. Apparently it was 22 hertz. Supposedly Warzone, although I think they're up to some suspicious prioritization stuff with Warzone. The Warzone servers were supposedly running at about 45 hertz the last time I checked. Everybody thought it was 20, then they thought it was 30, then people had tests that said it was 45, and it seems to me to be a prioritization thing, that they're running possibly in conjunction with the skill-based matchmaking. I'm not sure, but people were getting different test results, and the maximum, I think, was 45. Originally, I think it always tested at 20 or 30. But whatever the case, Warzone has never tested, to my knowledge, to be up at the 60 hertz level. So, the ground war modes, and now this is getting into Cold War again too. Both the games where they have the larger modes are literally running at a lower server rate than a game in 2013. And this is what happened. On the same ping, so in Modern Warfare, when you go down to their standard 22 hertz servers instead of the 62 hertz, that delay doubled. It went from 44 to 60 to 87 to 99.4, and as high as 124. So your average in ground war, your average player-to-player delay in the movement was 100 milliseconds. So you can almost double everything that I was just showing. 500, 250, 125. The standard delay window in ground war was nearly twice the regular game. That then means that the bidirectional player-to-player was even worse. That puts you up at this kind of window, up at a nearly 250 millisecond discrepancy between position and damage. That's like, if that's the window, that's going from here to here, roughly. I'm not going to get too specific because that's close enough. That means the damage delay went from 44 up to 87.6. It did double. And Warzone is somewhere in the middle of all of that. But so what does that mean then? As you go up in ping, it gets worse. That means that if that's the case on a 27 millisecond ping, as you go up, it gets worse. When you go into the when you go, and so this is really again the whole point. I'm taking Modern Warfare 2019 as an ideal model on par with Fortnite and CSGO of an ideal connection and the windows, and showing that when you go from 60 hertz down to 20 hertz, the delay windows nearly double. if not doubling. So everything that I was just demonstrating is now twice as bad. When you go up in ping, it can be as much as a a, a, a 1-to-1 increase, meaning that if you get into a lobby that is now a 50 millisecond ping to a server, or however they want to calculate it, as your player-to-player delays go up, that player-to-player delay in a no overhead situation would have been 30 milliseconds. When it goes up to a 60 millisecond player-to-player delay, depending on the asymmetry of the people's connections and whatever, it may potentially be then doubling again, and that's constant. I used to play Modern. When I played 800 hours of Modern Warfare last year, and I was constantly in lobbies listed at 60 to 90 ping. Wherever they're counting their ping from, whatever they're using as their barometer of the ping, whether it's the server or the general player pool, constantly it was listed up at 60 and 90. It's actually much better right now on all the games, but constantly with 60 to 90. That may be as much as 3 times the delay going on. So there are now 2 different things that I want to introduce here. One is that during the Cold War beta, on roughly the same servers, hertz, roughly the same ping. You're talking about on the server hertz 59 versus 62 and 20 versus 59 versus 62 and 20 versus 22. On roughly the same ping, 28 milliseconds versus 27 or 29. The delay, instead of being 44 to 60, was 90 to 97.6. The average delay of movement during the Cold War beta on the same ping was nearly 100 milliseconds. So you're talking about it from 60 up to 100, almost double. And it ranged as high as 120. Then the same situation happened with the large game modes. And so this is a real telltale sign of what I'm talking about here. For anybody who has played Fireteam Dirty Bomb and seen the people where you're like trying to hit them and it's like it's just skipping, or they seem to be teleporting from one place to another, or any of the laggy crap that's happened in that goes under the large modes and tested at being a 20 hertz server. The average delays on those Cold War beta 20 hertz big game combined arms dirty bomb modes ranged from 162 milliseconds to 182.8. The average movement delay in Fireteam Dirty Bomb on Cold War beta servers was 182 milliseconds. That is 3 times that delay. 182 milliseconds. If this is 500, this is 250. 182 was like this. That means that whatever I saw on my screen, if I saw them here and was shooting, they were actually easily right here. Even on the lowest possible pings of like 27 milliseconds. So they're on a 50 millisecond, they're actually over here somewhere. And I'm shooting them back here. Absolutely horrible. Now the thing is that typically speaking, I don't have the Modern Warfare beta tests in front of me, but it was much higher during the beta. Normally it goes down, but there is not. I don't have any final test results available to quote any of that. But those are like the worst numbers like possible in an online shooter game that were in the Cold War beta. And so that's number one. Is that basically it was awful. And it is directly hand in hand with those lower server rates. So the only tests that have ever publicly been done by the leading people on Cold War had triple the positional delay. It was that desynced. So that leads to the other point, and this is the thing, is that the new information has, I've discovered the new information. What's happened is that basically I was led to some interviews where core Call of Duty development people have essentially admitted that they penalized the good side of the connection. In other words, they at least on gunfire put an artificial delay on the better connection. So when I see the person, if I'm on a lower ping and I see a person at this position and I go to shoot, they're penalizing it and delaying it. And according to, and this is just so important, according to, okay, there's a generic model. The generic model says that if I'm on 15 milliseconds ping and the other person is on 90 ping, the difference between those is 75 milliseconds. In the generic model, you split that in half, which is 37.5 milliseconds. And you penalize me that's on the 15 milliseconds up to being 52.5. So, does that matter? How many times does that happen? Well, I know for a fact that last year I was constantly in those lobbies that said 90 milliseconds. I know for a fact that this year I am in Central East Coast, dense data hub, major metropolis, and when we play these peer-to-peer form Outbreak Zombies games, when I'm a host, I get pretty good performance. My best games are as a host. When somebody else is the host, I have pings ranging from 100 to 200 milliseconds. That means my connection to the other player is 100 to 200 milliseconds. So the constant 90 millisecond lobbies last year are well in that window. Whatever is going on with the Outbreak game mode. Outbreak is actually pretty popular. So that means that a 15 versus 90 window is not any extraordinary thing. So if that would, in a generic model, be a 37.5 millisecond penalty, what does that amount to? Well, that's exactly what I was just discussing. 37.5 is about 2/3 of that delay window that has been the whole point of this video. In other words, coming around here, as I begin to shoot, they're delaying me by 2/3 of that window I was talking about. And according to people in the development teams, and I do not know the details, only the people who are writing this code or who can crack it and look into it know the details. They are in fact penalizing more than that. It's server side. And one of the devs said that when you go in and are you feel like your controls are super floaty in a match. I don't think this happens as much this year for some reason. But when you go in, if it feels like your controls are like floaty around what you're attempting to do, for example, here's that 60 millisecond window. If you feel like in this window of motion everything is floaty and weird, that is in fact because they're delaying your motion relative to the other players on their game system. Now, I do not know for sure. This is apparently a server-side thing that is done via special commands on the server where they read everybody's ping. The people have said that it's done on a player-per-player constant basis. I do not think that that's true. I think that they build a profile that averages the things out for you, and they refresh it at a certain point, like after maybe 5 games or something. I'm not sure. I think they have a generic template they apply to a person for the delay penalty. I've always thought that they had a delay penalty. And people insisted that they didn't, and now the devs have flat out said, we always have done that. And that's not directly what people call lag compensation. In fact, it's apparently called anti-lag. But regardless of position, since I do not know what it's doing on the position, I think that there's truth to that because I have experienced that floatiness. They are definitively putting a delay on the gunfire. Well, what does that amount to? Again, 37.5 milliseconds. That means that if I go in, if I engage in a head-to-head gunfight, whatever is happening between the two screens, when I see on my screen the person head-to-head, if we begin shooting in real time at the exact same time, and I'm on the lower ping, they are, in that situation, artificially demote me by 37.5 milliseconds. On a 100 millisecond TTK gun, that's over a third. In other words, in a head-to-head gunfight with the same exact guns, I would lose simply from being penalized. Now, if somebody thinks that's being super particular, that's not being particular at all. Think back to how many times you have engaged in a head-to-head gunfight in a first-person shooter like Call of Duty, and you've sat there and shot first, or on a semi-auto, pumped multiple bullets, and nothing happened. The devs explicitly said that a lot of what people think is failing hit registration is actually because of the anti-lag server-side commands. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Furthermore, they have specifically told people that they adjust those values depending on what they think is good for the game. And they apparently can adjust them mid-updates. Meaning that the default 50-50 split is not always the case. They can shift it to a 33-66, a 20-80, whatever they want to set on the server commands. And this just brings up the whole issue of everything. That is, when people who test these games haven't detected that this is the blanket operation of the game, and we have people in the community have noticed this for a decade. How many times have we all gone into a gunfight and been shooting and blazing and nothing is happening and we're dead? How many times has somebody flown around a corner and we got insta-melted? It is constant. Furthermore, knowing that that happens with the damage and possibly with the positioning, if they do it with the positioning, that means it's even worse. That means that when they see me here and I'm in fact moving over here, it's actually being delayed possibly even more. And so this is how in Black Ops 4 there was a I can't remember the name of the map. It's like a warehouse type thing, and there's stairs, and it's like skywalks and stuff. But oh my goodness, I had times where there would be like a crater box, and I'm like, boom, down here, and you see the tracers flying up in the air, and I'm just sitting here flashing red with damage. So whatever. The other thing to add to all that is that when they do the standard lag compensation, and when they do this, apparently for years what they've done is that they make the assumption that your upstream and downstream connection, your essentially they make the assumption that your up ping and down ping are the same half amount. As in, if your connection to the server was a 30 millisecond ping, they make the assumption that it was 15 up and 15 down. And the reality is that that does not happen. It depends on your ISP and a lot of things, but you may typically have an up ping that is half of what the down ping is. And what that does is that when the game makes the estimations of what's happening, it's off by that ping discrepancy. And so the person who showed this in the demonstrations, the only person I know who's ever shown it, was a YouTuber by the name of Oven Baked Muffin. And he went in and tested the he used special router commands and tested an asymmetric ping, and it conformed exactly to what he thought. If the people were on a 200 millisecond delay and one of them moved that 200 millisecond window, they would get hit at the 100 millisecond point as if they were back here. But if he made the ping asymmetric, they would be at the point where they would be hit if it was symmetric, and on the unsymmetric ping, it would just, nothing would happen. And so there's direct evidence that for a decade, when you're shooting at someone, not only is it the anti-lag commands, it's also a erroneous symmetric ping estimation rather than the possibly impossible to keep track of asymmetric ping. I don't think that they can keep track of that on the servers. The whole point of those anti-lag commands is that they're tracking your ping. But again, I don't think that they're really doing that. I don't think that they want people to know that. I don't think they want people to know that they're building profiles. Because if you really are having a profile applied to your damage rate based on your connection quality, it basically means it's all artificial. And the question is, the argument is going to be, is it, oh, are you nitpicking? It's not that artificial. It's as artificial as the windows that I was just demonstrating on this video. And so I question any person who ever sees this or is ever privy to any of this information. Does that seem like an arbitrary difference? It's not. And it only gets worse on lower servers, higher player counts, higher server overload, higher ping lobbies. It only gets worse. Every aspect of that gets worse. And if you're having a template applied to you in the middle of that, my God, I mean, what's left? You're basically playing an artificial gunfight at every point of time. And that is the reality. That is ultimately the point of this video. I've essentially given up at this point. I spent 5 months on Cold War I was steadily moving up from a 2 to 3 KD. I was trouncing people. I'm top of the board in every game mode. I'm gun shipping. I'm, whatever. And they came out with Season 3 update where they removed our server stats. And within 3 days, it was like I was being muted on every single gunfight. As to whether they did something, I personally think that they adjusted the lag compensation values. I think they changed the shooter versus defender advantage values. I think that they knew that they were doing that. Maybe something happened with our ISP here on the East Coast. Maybe something has happened because Apex Legends Respawn people, they have set up a very advanced tracking program to try and improve their connections, and they've found all sorts of different regions of the country that have hop issues. But personally, I think that something happened in the updates. And it is now to a point that I'm not even playing it. I refuse to have my KD trounced on what. It is like everything is skippy. It's spastic. It's what people like Drifter were saying they were experiencing for the first 5 months that I was not having a problem with. And it gets to the point, again, I'll go back to Battlefield 4. A game in 2013 had higher server rates than Fireteam or Ground War. And you can still get a lower ping by far to EA than you can get to Activision. And even under those circumstances, those Battlefield games up through Battlefield 5 have been tested over and over to have constantly artificially abbreviated death times, super bullets, and positional delays. And that's even with Battlefield implementing maximum lag comp thresholds, meaning that once you hit a certain discrepancy in pings, they stop allowing the compensation to happen. And to my knowledge, Call of Duty has never done that. You can be on, as long as it's functional, before it kicks you off the server, the connection, they'll let your lag comp work and give you the hits. So, there's no point. Your good connection is penalized. Your bad connections are sloppy. That state in Modern Warfare, because of if we had the quality of connection in Modern Warfare with a higher TTK and a modified lag comp or anti-lag values. Modern Warfare, I was just constantly insta-killed, and a lot of the time, what apparently was going on was in the enemy kill cams, you would see packet indicators that were called packet burst indicators, not packet loss, but packet burst. And every time I engaged with these people in conversation, they were on Wi-Fi. It is unbelievable the number of people who play this game like it's McDonald's junk fries on Wi-Fi. They are not competitive at all. They are not tactical at all. They run around mindlessly like chickens with their heads cut off on Wi-Fi. And it just ruins the game for the people who aren't on Wi-Fi. It basically does the spastic, bursty kind of update thing where they're not where they are, and then they're there and you're dead. So it's just been horrible. I've come to the conclusion that it is just, honestly, it would be more enjoyable to play with bots and have a decent player-to-player, have a decent, more real experience. Because as it is, again, if everybody was on wired 15 millisecond 120 hertz servers, Battlefield has had 120 hertz servers. The Battlefield 4 community test environment in 2014, you're talking 7 years ago, had 120 hertz servers. Battlefield 1 in 2018 in the test environments had 120 hertz servers. Right now, Valorant, which is not Activision, Valorant, which has, they have nowhere near the funds of Activision, have 128 hertz servers. With, I have 5 millisecond ping to EA and Microsoft. It is possible. It's possible, but this is awful. It has gotten so bad. I do not know about other people's, how some of these other people have good connections that they do. I do know that Warzone has been shown to have the same type of delay windows, the same positional discrepancies, but it does seem to honestly work better than any of the standard multiplayer modes. But for me, Plunder used to be much more functional than Warzone, and now All of them. Everything that I attempt to do playing Warzone, I'm on console on this 85 thing, and it is like being stuck in fudge. It is literally every gunfight. If you even look at somebody, you can feel the game engine slowing down, the frames slowing down. It like they're at a building across the city, and it starts to slow down just when they come into the rendering cone. Cold War barely even renders. I go in, I thought they were going to patch it in I thought within a month they would have patched it and there would be no more rendering issues. We would be winning in fire team and on the chopper, and everybody's faces are made out of polygons. When Zoo came out, 5 months later, maybe, the map doesn't even load for 3 seconds into the match. We'll be in the middle of the match and you can see the ground turning into grid lines and lattices while it's attempting to render. Absolutely horrible. The performance on Cold War is so horrible. And even on those optimal connections, those discrepancies on a minimal ping of ground war were terrible. Warzone has similar. It does seem to run better, but mine is horrible. So I hope it's a benefit to someone. I'm going to export this up to YouTube, and my point really ultimately is that even under the ideal situations, it has a truly, even under ideal situations, there is a major desync and discrepancy simply from operating at the level they're at over the internet. And the games are not operating under those ideal situations. And this game is even worse than any of that. There are things that need to be remedied and fixed, but on top of all of that, they are doing artificial junk. And who feels like putting their time and energy in some stupid gunfight where even on a good connection you're being automatically penalized by that kind of delay window? That's absurd. So, I'm pretty much through. I think it's just a dumb waste of time. I had gotten so good at Cold War that it had literally gotten boring. And now it's just a complete waste of time. So, whatever. If I playing on PC on Warzone is a different experience. If I had a gaming PC, I don't really like a lot of the dynamics in Warzone, but it is very graphically impressive, and the netcode and general stuff is generally pretty good. But on the consoles, it's just, as best I can tell, complete garbage. So, all right, going to go ahead and check out.